tanks of India. I'm privileged to call him on stage, Biju Dominic, to come and address us.
Good morning, esteemed audience. Okay, it's a brilliant topic, the future of education. And can you hear me? Yeah. I think when I'm going to speak today about the future of education, I will possibly speak from an area of expertise that I come from. Final Mile works across some of the, and designs interventions to solve some of the toughest problems in the world. And most of those problems are human behavior problems. Right from reducing road accidents in India to reducing the incidence of teenage pregnancy in South Africa, to reducing suicides in Calcutta Metro. We work across a spectrum of human behavior problems. To me, when I'm looking at education and how do we get our kids to learn more, it's still in the realm of human behavior. Recently, about a few months back, I think I came across this cover story of Economist, which to me really transformed, I'm sure, the discussions we have about education. Because the Economist cover story suddenly told us that education is not just about 10 to 12 years of school education and about 3 to 5 years of college education. It moves far beyond the gates of school and college education. Because the knowledge is changing so much that what we learn today is outdated in the next 5 years. Which means as I start working, and earlier it was about 17, 18 years of education and 40 years of utilizing that particular knowledge, in the corporate world. But that has completely changed. For example, the science that I use today and I study and I use today didn't exist when I finished my MBA about 27 years back. So the science that I use today is a science that I learned much after I came out of an educational institution. So the whole challenge of education today is all about how do we get the kids to go beyond the motivations of what they are learning today for. Today, there's no doubt about it, when we look at school education and college education, it's all about getting high marks. It's all about grades. It's all about the degree that I get so that I can get a job. But today, when you look at the much larger context of education, we suddenly realize that no, much later, as I started being working for the last 10 to 15, 20 years, I suddenly realized the science that I use is no more relevant. And I'm almost getting a feeling that the science that I use is getting more and more outdated. So how do I, while sitting in the office and having my children and taking care of my wife and my home, but I still come back and I still start learning new things so that I stay relevant in my corporate world. How do I do that? So obviously, somewhere, I think it has to then go beyond the degrees and marks. Then what is the key? What is the factor that's going to keep us motivated to learn and be educated on a regular basis? And that's love for knowledge. And I know some of you would say, oh, Biju, yeah, of course we know that. But the question is, how do I inculcate the love of knowledge, not just when the kids are in school or in college, but how do I do it as you and I are in our 30s and 40s and our 50s? How do I do that? to me, and some of the learnings comes from not from anywhere else. Because I know as principals and as educators would say, no. You shouldn't love the colas. You shouldn't love, the potato chips. You shouldn't love the junk foods. Now, as a person who studies human behavior, I would turn back and ask, how do these companies get the kids to love these products? And there is a process which they are doing. And there's a process that happens in our brains which makes us crave for it. That means the kids are demanding that I need more chips. The kids are demanding that I need more burgers. The kids are demanding that I need colas, despite all of us telling them, no, don't do it. So is it possible for us to dream when the kids would say, Mama, I want to study more. No, I don't want to sleep. I want to study for more time. Mama, I don't want TV. No, I want to do my homework, a few more problems across there. Mama, I have to design something for the class. I want to do more. Is it possible? And I believe as a person who understands the functioning of the human brain, if they can do it, we can do it. Because for us, from the construction of the brain, the love for the colas and the love for someone else and the love for knowledge are all nothing but electrochemical reactions in our brain. And if you really understand the very construct of how love and passion is created, we can actually use that for anything in the world. And that's why I think, but the good thing is that in the last few years, there has been a fundamental shift in our understanding of human behavior. Can I have the slides here so that you don't, yeah. I think in the last 10 to 12 years, there has been a fundamental shift in our understanding of human behavior. There have been two big sciences have come about. One is obviously the science of cognitive neuroscience, and the other is behavioral economics. And Professor Thaler just won the Nobel Prize in economics 2 weeks back. Obviously, Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in 2002. I think with these two sciences coming in, I think the world has realized that there are traditional understanding of human behavior that was based on a traditional psychology theories like behaviorism and cognitive science and others are now thrown out of the window. And I think there is a new perspective that we are now developing as far as human behavior is concerned. Whether they are drivers on the road, there are teenage kids who are wanting to jump into the bed in South Africa, or our kids who are sitting in our classrooms. When you're trying to understand human behavior, these sciences are saying, now we need to look at it differently from what we've been looking at before. I won't have time to get into all the details, but some of them are not incremental, I can assure you. The knowledge that comes from these sciences are not incremental. They are paradigm shifting. Because one knowledge, for example, says we always knew that human beings are all conscious and rational beings, and they know what they do. But today, neuroscience will tell you that 99.99% of our human behavior comes from the non-conscious parts of the brain, which means we have no clue as to why we behave the way we do. Or we have always thought that there is rational and emotional thinking, and we should keep emotions away in decision making. But today, neuroscience comes and says all decisions are emotional. Or we believe that people are rational human beings who analyze all the things that are there is and then takes the optimum decision. But behavioral economics comes and says the human brain does not have the time nor the ability to actually take rational decisions. So we are almost always irrational human beings. Fourth, many times I know when people talk about rapists and other things, what happened in Delhi and others, they say, how can people do this? But today neurosciences would say, you and I have grown up in the same environment as those particular kids grew up. if you and I were in the same situation on that particular night as those people were, you and I have an extremely high chance would commit the same problem that the kids committed, because context determines your behavior. So there are fundamental shifts that are happening around in our understanding of human behavior, which means we have all created, while teaching our students and trying to motivate our kids, there is a construct of a human behavior we have, which means those kids are rational, those kids are conscious of what here, and they know what I'm telling them, and they're hearing it. But today, thanks to these sciences that come about in the last 10 to 12 years, we're saying, no. The kids who are sitting in front of us are predominantly working from their non-conscious minds. They're mostly rational kids driven by their emotions. As Shankar Vedantam put it, this new understanding of human behavior constitutes a revolution no less intriguing, perhaps more powerful than the discovery that the earth is not the center of the universe. And today, when we're talking about education, which is nothing but molding the minds of kids, molding the behaviors of our kids, I want to say, I'm standing like Galileo and telling all of you, hey, the world has changed. The world is fundamentally shifted. And those of us, we can continue to believe that earth is the center and continue our practices of teaching and our methodologies and our programs and our designs of schools and all of it. But we can be a few of us who says, no, I understand there is a new paradigm. And I adapt my teaching process, my scholastic, all my methods to this new process. And the question that I would ask all of you who are leaders of education is, are you willing to accept this new paradigm? But the man who came up with the word paradigm, Thomas Kuhn, would straight away tell you that whenever there is a paradigm shifting thoughts, none of us want to accept it. And the more intelligent we are, the more intelligent reasons we will come up to hold on to the status quo. But still, I want to put forward a certain perspective on how do we create the love for knowledge in our schools, possibly using some of these new sciences. I think, to me, knowledge happens best when there is ignorance. I think ignorance is the best motivator for creating more knowledge. I think that was put forward very well by Stuart Firstein. He was teaching neuroscience in Columbia University. The main book that the kids were supposed to learn about neural connections in the brain is about 14 pages. But he realized in no time that by the time the course was over, a whole lot of kids walked out of the course saying that, I know all about the brain. And I know, and I can do all about it. And as a person who knew the brain, the functioning of the brain, says, how can it be? The human brain is the most complex system in the world, with about 100 billion neurons and about another almost 100 another trillion connections. We got far more fundamental connections in the brain than the fundamental particles in the human brain. But how can the kids walk out of a course believing that I know all about it? And that's when he wrote this particular book on the importance of ignorance. And today I'm realizing that one of the factors that we need to inculcate in our education is there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. But today, many a time when we give 100 out of 100 to a student in mathematics, right from 1st standard to 10th standard to 12th standard, what are we actually telling the kid? You're very good. And somewhere it gets into the kid's mind that mathematics, of course, I know it. Or when we give a first rank in design to a student from Pearl Academy and sends that kid out, what are we telling the kid? Are we telling the kid that, hey, mathematics is a vast ocean. You are just just touching, just little, you're just standing at the shore of it. I think this is a fundamental shift that we need to create in our whole evaluation process. And I interact a lot with kids. And I have seen a lot of kids who do extremely well till 10th standard, 90, 95, 98%, till 12th standard, then going down from a graduate level across. Why? And one of the reasons I would attribute is that you have put a lot of knowledge or a lot of information into the head, but we haven't told them that it's a journey that you've just begun. It's a journey that you need to enjoy. And somewhere in our educational system, we are not creating the love for knowledge. Because intelligent curiosity, ignorance actually creates curiosity. And I think curiosity has to come from questions. And I think there is a famous mathematician called David Gilbert in 1900, while giving one of those lectures, said there are these 23 problems, you mathematicians should try to solve. If you're a mathematician, try solving this. Now in 2017, only 10 of those questions have been answered so far. But a whole lot of people who love mathematics are sitting there to solve those. And the question I would ask each of you as educators are you raising enough questions that every kid says, sir, I want to find an answer to it. I want to really work on it, sir. Are you raising the questions? Or are you giving 100 out of 100 for certain answers they gave for questions which are far too simplistic? Because when kids do that search, when the education is a journey, I think there is a joy of discovery. And that process of trying to unravel that question. Somewhere, and when a question is there, the kids forget to sleep. They forget to, all that. They just pursue it there. And in that pursuit, somewhere that start getting, somewhere that start getting a high there. Because I know as teachers, you would actually say, one of the big worries as much as education is today's younger generation getting addicted. And I did speak about quite a few addictions. And as a person who understands neuroscience, we get a lot into the addiction, the neuroscience of addiction. Why does kids want to smoke? Why do kids want to, why do they want thrill? Why do they want speed? Why do they want sex? All of it is a neuroscience-based, we can provide answers. And addictions is where every time I take a smoke, every time I do something, there is something called a dopamine release. And that's exactly the same chemical gets released when you are searching for something and suddenly you got an answer. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. That's exactly that high happens because of dopamine. That's the same dopamine that gets released when a kid actually takes that cigarette which he should not be smoking. But the question that I want to ask, and we should answer ourselves, is if kids can get high from taking a cigarette or having a cola, why can't they not get a high from doing certain things in our classrooms? The aha moments. How do you create that within our classrooms? Many times we have said teenagers, they are friends, they go around together, they're doing a lot of wrong things. Of course, that's how the brains are. Their brains, oxytocin is another chemical. When they sit down together, yes, studies have shown that if they're alone, they're so much. But when there are 3, 4 of them, yes, studies have shown when there's only one guy driving a car, car will go slow. But there are 4 of them sitting in a car, the speed of the car goes up by about 40% and more. Why? Because a chemical oxytocin comes into the system and there are 3, 4 of them chatting and all are doing it. But why can't we get the same group feeling into education? When the kids sit down together and discuss things, we call it copying. Because the whole education system is trying to say, you are an individual and that's it. No. Don't ask any question, don't share any information, that's it. Our education system has to fundamentally change. And I work in the corporate world and I work with some of the some of the biggest companies in the world. And I can tell you one thing. Out there in the corporate world, we want people who are not loners. We want people who can work in a team, who can work together and come up with a solution. Because we know the world of knowledge is so complicated. It's impossible for one guy to know all the things and find a solution for all the problems in the world. It's only with collaborative perspective of my knowledge, your knowledge, your knowledge, your knowledge, when we sit down across, and some of them are contradictory, but sit down together, we develop. That's what solutions are. And that's when we design some of the best solutions. But how do we get kids to work in groups? And that's when the real highs really happen. But when I go to, speak to kids in school levels and college levels, a lot of people ask me, Uncle, I don't know what I'm really good at. Now, I agree I want to do well in life, and I really want to do it. And I often believe that one of the things that we need to do in school level and college levels are, by the time the kids at least leave the school, can they at least, each of those kids sitting across there, know what I'm really good at? A whole lot of kids walk out of schools getting a lot of marks, but they have no clue what is it I'm really good at. I'm a Catholic, a Christian, and one of the Christian beliefs is, and I assume all other religions have the same belief, that every child born into this world, God sends them with one talent, one core talent in their hand. But what are those talents for? And a whole lot of kids, and not kids, a whole lot of us finish our life on this earth without knowing what is that talent God had given me for. And the biggest question that I would ask each of us teachers who spend so much time looking at every article and every homework they do, if you go a bit more deeper, can you really find out what that kid is really good at? Can you just tell him, no, don't worry. I know maths is not a forte, but I can see you, in geography. I think you really love places. I can see it. So can we do that? Because somewhere, once you tell them this is their talent is, slowly by the time the college and then this one really happens, they start driving deep into it, and then that becomes their passion. So, to me, when you ask what is the education of tomorrow, it's all about making learning into a dopamine releasing addiction. I can speak for hours on this, but I'm just leaving. Because there's a lot for us to learn, as I said before, from the people who really use the dopamine release and get our kids addicted to a lot of wrong things. But if we go a bit more deeper into that very construct of their communication strategies, the very construct of how they maintain those brands and the usage, and if you transform that into our learning experience, I can tell you, yes, our kids will love to come back to our schools, classrooms every day. As I said, if we can get our kids thrilled by having burgers and Coca-Colas of the world, the same dopamine, if you get them to get released in our classrooms, our kids will come back to our classrooms and will love learning, not just when they are in school and in college, but as they go on to work for the corporate world. As they're in their 70s and 80s, they'd still love to pick up a book. And they would say, I want to read. I want to pick up more and more knowledge. So, for me, the education of tomorrow is a dopamine releasing experience that we start in school and college, but that continues through to the last day of our life on this earth. But I know one thing. There is a traditional way of doing things, which are traditional understanding of human behavior, which have been built on the traditional understandings of psychology theories. But to walk this new path, I have no doubt that we have to take this new understanding of human behavior, coming in from the world of cognitive neuroscience and behavioral economics, and then use design to develop interventions. The last 10 years, now we have shown the world that, yes, we can manage a whole lot of problems in the world which has remained unsolved for a long time, but we have designs and we have proven across there. And I have no doubt we can redesign the future of education, provided few of us, or all of us sitting in this room, decide to walk a path that has not been walked so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Biju. I'm sure we are going to be together walking on that path. I would now like to introduce our second speaker, Geetanjali, founding member and head of academics, Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, Ladakh. An entrepreneur turned educator, Geetanjali's passion is to create an environment and integral learning which empowers students and facilitators to become the best version of themselves. A multi-talented person in management, business, education, culture, performing, and martial arts herself, she believes that human beings can continue to grow into multifaceted individuals all their lives, and the aim of education is to instill the quest of lifelong learning in them, which is contextual and experiential. After her post-graduation in business management from the prestigious Xavier Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, she worked for 8 years in the corporate sector with various MNCs in India and abroad. Thereafter, she has been a successful entrepreneur for the last 14 years, having started and scaled up ventures and various industries like energy, infrastructure, publishing, and healthcare. Currently, she is helping the creation of HIAL, an ambitious project aiming to bring a revolution in higher education in India. Geetanjali.
Good morning, everyone. I also have a small PowerPoint presentation, if that can be organized. It's called Pearl, the folder. Yeah. I remember a quote from the American fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein, where he says that a human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Well, if the list is not long and diverse enough, I would like to add that a human being should be able to love his near and dear ones, inspire his colleagues, meditate, dance ballet, become a black belt, run businesses, study philosophy, do gymnastics, attain self-realization. The list can be endless. To me, the purpose and the future of education is to build a human being with all these skills. Well, we may ask, is that possible? Because we have grown up in the age of specialization, where we have been taught ever since we were kids. We were asked that question, what would you like to be when you grow up? And we expect the child to come up with that one answer, to which we tell him he should devote his life to. Because only then we would be people of some importance. We use disparaging, we use being jack of all trades in a very negative way. Because we assume that if we do many things, we will not be good at most of them. But what if we were told that not only can we learn many trades, but master most, if not all of them? Would it not give expression to all that we are and help us to be that fearlessly? Would it not, as a result, help us to lead happier and fuller lives? So in my next 20-25 minutes, I would like to tell you that the future of education is not just a future, it's a revolution. It's going to be a revolution because the shift of times has begun. When the hunter-gatherer became an agriculturist and settled down, there was the agricultural revolution. When he began making products more than his bare hands and tools, he became an industrialist, and that was the Industrial Revolution. And then came the power of technology and computing, and that is what we are currently going through the revolution of. Though it is predicted that the next revolution would be of robotics and artificial intelligence, I would beg to differ that while that could be the next wave, but certainly not the next revolution, because the next revolution will be that of human evolution in his totality and integrality. Because the Industrial Revolution was about the capitalism of the commodity. We all wonder why Columbus would risk his life and come from so many miles for the spices in India. Because the spices, I think we can, how do you do this? Screen share. No, yeah. I would like not to start it now. No, I would not like to start the presentation now, a little late. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So Columbus risked his life because spices were very, they were not easily available. But today you walk into a supermarket, whether you are in Europe or India, and you get the exotic spices from all over. So what is the next exotic thing that we all cannot replace? No? Any answers? What is it that we are all searching and seeking, towards which education has to finally converge? Sorry? Yes, it could be self-satisfaction. What else? Yeah, you're closer. So the next revolution or the capitalism is going to be the intellectual capitalism or the capitalism of wisdom. And it again revolves around the human being. Okay? The next currency is going to be common sense. The next currency is going to be all that a robot cannot do, and which is things like pattern recognition. You cannot make an intelligent robot which can even segregate garbage. You cannot make a robot which can do creativity. So institutions like Pearl Academy, which do creative stuff, is the future. So pattern recognition, creativity, common sense, this is going to be the wealth of the future. And where does it reside? In the human being, in the human brain, which cannot be mass-produced, like that in case of commodity capitalism. Today, whatever we aspired for has been demonetized or dematerialized by countries like China and so on, because they have produced products which anybody can buy. But unfortunately, we cannot mass produce the human being or the human brain and the human qualities. They have to be nurtured, cultivated, educated. And that's where the next revolution is going to be. The revolution of human growth and evolution in his totality. So before we move into what the future of education would be, we'll quickly touch upon the purpose of education, I think. And I think we'll all agree that the purpose is to have awareness of the external reality, the inner reality of who we are, the external reality of the environment, the relation between the two. That's the first step. And secondly, having understood that, having been aware, to have the tools to intervene, to act. And that is where the human skill, knowledge, and attitude come in, which have been approached by many thinkers in the last 50 years in various ways. Howard Gardner talks about multiple intelligences, that a human being is just not about numeracy or literacy, he's many other things. It's about musical intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and so on. Mahatma Gandhi spoke about, and which we believe is the next revolution, that we have to move away from 3 R's of education, which is reading, writing, arithmetic, to the 3 H's of the head, heart, and hands. So the next education would be around all 3. Right now we do a limited role in just the development of the head, and that too in a limited fashion. So I will now share with you a small journey of myself and this institute that I am helping set up, which started this journey some 25 years ago without knowing all these things of what is the next learning revolution or, what is the next of revolution, but just using common sense, which is the most, available human quality, to solve problems which were real, contextual, in an experiential way, bringing the whole person into it. So to me, that is the future of education, an education which is real. Real because we are training students to finally go out into the real world, but we do it through projects and simulations. But here's a school which I'll talk to you about, which addresses real life problems, be it climate change or passive solar buildings. It takes the context into account and finds problems and solves them in real-time basis. Can we play? So this is an institution in a place called Ladakh, which is trans-Himalayan. It is beyond the Himalayas, where the rain clouds, monsoons do not reach, and therefore it's an arid landscape. It's a desert. But even though it is a very difficult place, where the temperatures go up to -30, civilization has not only survived, but it has thrived. This is a minority, not only culturally, but also ecologically and technologically. And yet, there is dance, music, art, culture, which has happened in this valley. Several years ago, there was a scenario where only 5% of students passed in this whole region of Ladakh. And it was attributed to several conditions, like maybe lack of oxygen in the air and so on. But when an engineer who turned educator tried to deal with the situation, he found that it was because the whole education was non-contextual. It was something which was copied from the plains of India and did not have any relevance to the mountains. And therefore, the children could not relate to it. Like, for instance, when we read A for apple, B for baby, the children at -30 degrees were taught F for fan. And they would ask their teachers what it is, and the teacher would say, well, even I don't know. And this is how our education is all over the country. It is not contextual. We may be in the Himalayan region in the north, or in Cochin in the south, or in the Thar Desert in the west, or in the northeast, the curriculum across universities is the same, so that the students just learn something which is not in their context, like the students here. So an experiment was started where all the textbooks were rewritten, and a program called Operation New Hope was begun with the government, village community, taking all the stakeholders into account. And gradually, over 10 years, it was found that 5% result became 75%. And this was the land where the school was decided to be built, which was a desert. And after 5 years, this was the school that was built, along with the students. Okay? The students who were to study built this school. While building, they learnt about solar passive heating techniques, about architecture, about the properties of earth and mud, and so on, which is what we call experiential learning, or learning by doing. Here, the students run the school. It is run like a little democracy, where they form a parliament for 2 months, and they take care of real life problems of the school. For instance, they milk the cows, they take care of the gardens, grow their own food, they manage the solar buildings. By the way, this school was an off-grid solar school back 25 years back, when solar technology was not yet discovered as it is today. So the students run their own school. Every 2 months, they have a parliament. They select their chief, who selects his ministers, and they divide the entire running of the school between themselves and make a presentation at the end of 2 months. And that's how they learn, by doing. For instance, if they are milking the cows, they do bar graphs, they study volumes, and if they handle other aspects that they're related to academics. So we saw it is experiential, it is real life, and it is contextual, because they learn about the ecology of Ladakh, they learn about the problems of water there, and they come up with innovations like these artificial glaciers and solar passive buildings. They learn through experience, like they learn germ theory by making their own jams and pickles, and then they go and sell it right up to Delhi, thereby learning geography along the way. Okay, and everything is learning by doing, and academics comes alive, as Mr. Biju was saying. This is the dopamine way of teaching, where learning is a byproduct. It is fun doing things, because curiosity is something every person has, every child has. And we start here from how, you catch that curiosity and thereby make them ask more and more questions and keep answering them, opening them up to further questions. So most of the students from here, after studying, have gone on to becoming entrepreneurs. The most special thing about this school is that the intake is not the percentage, but that you have failed. Because when 75% students started passing, there was still this 25% that failed. And for them, this school was started. So the intake here are the failures. And the first thing which is told to them is that, along with ignorance, I think failure is a prerequisite to anything in life. So they are told that, congratulations, you have experienced the best thing at an early age, and you're ready, to take on life. Because you must be aware that the Australian Army takes only those students who have at least failed thrice in their life, because they believe that talent can only open the first door. It's only the ability to bounce back after failing that takes you till the end. As we know from the example of Vinod Kambli, who never got back to playing cricket because his first match was a disaster. So this ability to fail is something the future of education will recognize as an important step along with ignorance. As they say, asking dumb questions is no more a dumb thing. You know, it is that courage to ask it. And through those dumb questions, actually, the finest of inventions have happened. And similarly, this school takes failure students and relaunches them back into life. And some of them have gone on to becoming the education minister who failed their 5 times. There is another person who has become a filmmaker and is winning international awards. He failed 4 times. This women's company was launched by another student from our school who failed her 3 times. But as a part of the experiential learning program of the school, whenever visitors come, the students actually take them for various trails and show them the school around and the part of Ladakh. And that gave her the confidence to start her own women's travel company. And today she's a celebrated social entrepreneur. There are several innovations that are a part of daily life in the school here. We call it playing with earth, sun, ice, and fire, because these are the things that are abundantly available there. At minus 30 degrees, these cement homes do not work. The energy bill to keep it warm is actually something which is 10 years of the product. I mean, you spend so much energy to keep yourself warm in 10 years that you can build a building for it which would last you for 100 years. So I was yesterday in Ludhiana where they are burning straw because the farmers don't have any other way, and that's what causes pollution. And here we have a need for buildings which would be made of clay, which has the thermal mass and can keep a building inside at plus 15 when there is minus 15 outside. And if you mix that straw, you make those straw clay bricks which were used 100 years ago in our villages in India, but we have abandoned it. So in this school, we research the past technologies which were great, and we make them, we remodernize them and launch them. So this is where the palaces, which have stood for 800 years, using just clay and not cement, are studied. And a new technology is developed through which the school was built 25 years ago, and it continues to train students who have gone on to becoming entrepreneurs in their own right, building such buildings in Ladakh. So if we use the straw from Punjab into the clay there, you reduce the pollution here in Punjab and you reduce the pollution in Ladakh because you don't have to then burn wood to keep your homes warm because you're making this clay wood. So in both the places you reduce carbon emission. And these are the kind of innovations that all the time the students come up with addressing real life problems. So this is when the school was being built. And then they have gone on to become now building very sophisticated, these are all mud buildings, but they look like any European interiors. Similarly, solar power, the building is completely off-grid. It does not, and it runs by solar. Solar is used for cooking, greenhouse, natural lighting, water pumping, electricity, and everything. And a lot of innovations go on to making it self-sustainable. The plan is to keep it completely without any footprint. So that would be the other thing for tomorrow. When I said that awareness of the environment, it will not be just training students who become part of this commercial machinery to earn their livelihood. It would be students who are responsive to the environment and make it sustainable. So responsiveness to the environment is going to be one of the very important aspects of the education of tomorrow. So when this was being done about 25 years ago, one was so ahead of its time that there was criticism and that it will not work. But it's only after 25 years that France and the whole world recognized the technology and was awarded the Terra Award last year, and also an International Award of Sustainable Architecture. Yeah. So I'm taking off from what was said at Pearl Academy, that being ready for the next 25 years. So it is something that we need to do today about it. And this was something done, and the world may not recognize it. You may be a loner on the path, but there has to be that conviction in the heart and that passion that has to, that with that vision of the future that has to keep one going. Similarly, there was no women's ice hockey team in India, because, and especially in Ladakh, because they were in very difficult areas where it was not possible for the girls to be able to reach. So we built an ice rink just outside the girls' hostel. This was another innovation, that, an ice rink can be built by students themselves. And this was built so that they could come out and play just outside. And last year, they represented India. This was for the last 10 years. And they beat Malaysia. And the team from Ladakh, and from our school, about 19 girls. This was their second international match, and they're growing stronger every year. Water is a problem in the valleys. The whole civilization thrives from melting water from the glaciers. And because of how we live in the cities, we are making the glaciers melt and making life difficult for the people in the mountains. They are suffering for no mistake of theirs. So March or April to May, when it's spring season, just after winter, because all the glaciers have melted, have frozen, there is no water. And that's when you need to sow the seeds in spring, and there's no water. So the other innovation done by the school was of this artificial glacier, where the water, a vertical artificial glacier is built, which stores water of up to 3 million liters in one of these called ice stupas, and melts in spring, where it gives water, and therefore we start greening the valley. So the other thing for the future education would be applied, as I said, applied knowledge. Now this fantastic innovation is just built on class 8 maths, where you take water from a higher point, and because water will reach its level, there will be pressure in it, and you put a fountain, and it will throw up water in minus 30 degrees as a fountain, and it would lose latent heat and freeze. So this is something we teach in class 8. But we don't open our brains to think that we can actually solve real life problems through this, And many such things were done before, where horizontal glaciers were made, but it evaporated just in a month. So again, a class 8 maths, that a conical shape has maximum volume for minimum surface area. And therefore, we learn it and we solve hundreds of problems using the formula of volume of cone and surface area of cone. But how many of us step back and think where we can apply it in our lives? So applying knowledge is going to be, because that's where human common sense and creativity comes, is going to be the aim of future education. This is how it is built, but we can skip it. And similarly, we work on how to avoid disasters by using, again, very simple siphoning techniques and so on. I would not like to go into the details. But what I would like to end with is that what I started with, that we are all born to be multifaceted, actually. Let us not get into the trappings that we have to just do one thing. I never believed in it myself. And that is why when at the age of 33, I got a chance to learn Russian ballet, I went to Russia and I told the teacher that I am here to learn, and she said, sorry, you will never be able to dance on stage. I can't take you as a student. Then I said, but I'm not wanting to dance on stage. And she said, but then why would you want to learn? I said, I'm learning it for my own self-perfection, and in India we dance for God. And secondly, we don't have a concept of age in Asia. My teacher in Indian classical danced up into his 90s. So she took me on, and I began traveling to Kyiv every year for a month. And in 2 months, I was dancing on my point shoes. At the age of 33, actually. So, lifelong learning, as Dr. Biju was saying. How do I get out of this presentation? Lifelong learning is something that we need to have with a childlike passion, and not to believe that we are just meant for one thing. We can be many things, and I learned it the hard way, because as a student, as a child, I loved everything. I loved literature, I loved sciences, maths, sports, dance, and then I was constantly asked to just choose, but I thought that it need not be so, but there was nobody to support. When I finally once read about Da Vinci, and that he was an artist, a painter, an anatomist, a geologist, and all of these which we can be either together or in succession. And let us not make education a utilitarian business of getting a job, because that will come. I'll end with Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a story by Richard Bach, where there is this gull that refuses to go out with its friends to hunt for fish every day because it wants to fly, So it is comparable to taking up a job, being a specialist to earn your livelihood, in comparison to following your passions and expressing your complete individuality. And in the course of the story, from a height, she could catch the better fish than her friends who were on the shore. So let us give expression to all that we are, because the future is dynamic. We need to inculcate skills of adaptability, of learning fast, because things, as he said, were getting obsolete. And being a polymath or doing many things brings up the emergent properties of new things at the intersection points. We have this lovely iPhone and iMacs because Steve Jobs loved calligraphy, and he refused to believe that dot prompt could be the way computers worked. So it was at the intersection point of aesthetics and technology that we have today's phones. So in future, the education is going to be such that varied fields and specialities which have no connection are going to come together, and in their intersection points, beautiful new things are going to emerge. And to be able to embrace that and to be able to be a part of that, we need to have multiple skills, multiple personalities. Linearity and singularity are things of the past. Let us fearlessly give expression to all that we are as integral, complete human beings, without this utilitarian idea of where is my education taking me. But whenever you feel inspired, do something, because that is a universe's nudge towards exploring that field, and you never know where it will add up in future. Thank you.